I would like to reconvene the meeting of the Wall Township Board of Education. If we could please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Take a roll call. Mr. Anisio. Here. Mr. MacArthur.
Here.
Ms. Malloy.
Ms. Malloy had a family emergency and will be late.
Mr. Sanfilippo.
Here.
Mr. Sullivan.
Here.
Mr. Wondrak. Here. Ms. Waniak.
Is excused this evening.
Ms. Connolly.
Here. At this time, I'm going to ask Mr. Gross to administer the oath to our new board member, Mr. Andrew Krupa.
Can you do it by the podium, please, with the mic on?
Make it super official.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all right.
Raise your right hand. We'll do it again.
Okay.
I, Andrew Krupa, do solemnly swear
I, Andrew Krupa, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
and to the government
and to the government
established in the United States
established in the United States
and this state
and this state
under the authority of the people.
under the authority of people.
So help me God.
So help me God.
I, Andrew Krupa, do solemnly swear
I, Andrew Krupa, do solemnly swear
that I possess the qualifications
that I possess the qualification
prescribed by law
prescribed by law
for the office of member of a Board of Education,
for the office of member of Board of Education,
and that I am not disqualified
and that I am not disqualified
as a voter
as a voter
pursuant to 19:4-1,
pursuant to 19-4-1,
and that I will faithfully,
That
nor disqualified
nor disqualified
due to a conviction of a crime
due to conviction of a crime
or offense listed
or offense listed
in NJS
in NJS
18A
18A
12-1,
12-1,
and that I will faithfully,
and I will faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly perform
and justly perform
all the duties of that office
all the duties of that office
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
On behalf of the entire Board of Education, we would like to welcome Mr. Krupa to the dais and wish him best of luck with his appointment. We need another roll call, Mr. Smythe.
Yes, Mr. Anisio. Still here. Mr. Krupa. Here. Mr. MacArthur.
Here.
Mr. Sanfilippo.
Here.
Mr. Sullivan.
Here.
Mr. Wondrak. Here. Ms. Connolly.
Here. We have no presentations this evening, and because it is June and after graduation, we have no student representative report either. So I'd like to take a minute to acknowledge the May 2019 Students of the Month at Wall High School. In 9th grade, we had Joseph Palmisano. In 10th grade, Ashley Liskowitz. In 11th grade, Abigail Green. And in 12th, Zoe Burkhardt. The Knights of the Week, in 12th grade, Eric Platt on May 6th. In 10th grade, Emily Kaufman on May 13th. In 9th grade, Ronan Maliff on May 20th. And in 10th grade, Amber Rooney and Allison Shepard on May 27th. Mrs. Dyer, do you have any superintendent's updates?
I do. We have now received the official HIB grade report from the Department of Education, and that has been posted on the website, or will be posted on the website prior to July 3rd, as required by code. This is the report that starts with our self-assessment, and the maximum number of points that any school can earn is 77. All of our schools scored between 70, I'm sorry, the maximum, yeah, I was right. The maximum is 78. All of our schools scored between 76 and 78, with the district grade or average being 77. I also can report this evening on the graduation data, which needs to be submitted to the Department of Education and reported to the Board of Education no later than September 30th of the school year. This is the data with regard to students with IEPs. Wall High School seniors with IEPs was a total of 53, and the total number of district seniors with IEPs was 60. We had 43 students graduate from Wall High School with IEPs, 2 who graduated out of district. We had 3 students who aged out at the age of 21 from Wall High School, and 1 student who aged from an out of district placement. So of a population of 60 students with special needs, 49 students received their high school diploma. And other than that, I would just also say that we had 2 very smooth, lovely graduation ceremonies last week. On Thursday, unfortunately, they both had to be held indoors due to the rain and the forecast for more rain, but they were really well executed, beautiful speeches by the students, and the live streaming went very well. We had overflow in the auditorium, which was also very well handled, and we received some nice emails from the public about the manner in which both the intermediate school and the high school ceremonies transpired, and in particular, a nice email today regarding how our senior citizens and handicapped audience members were accommodated by the staff in the building. So thank you to everyone involved. They were both great ceremonies.
Thank you, Superintendent Dyer. Does the board have any questions with regards to the HIB numbers, the graduation rates, or anything like that? Okay, seeing none, there are no Board of Education updates at this time. So we are on agenda item 14, which is public comment on agenda action items only. So if anybody has public comment to make on action items pursuant to policy 0167, now is the time to make comment. Okay, seeing none. We'll move into the business section of the meeting.
Madam President?
Yeah, Mr. Adenizio.
I'm sorry, I don't know if this is appropriate time, but I just wanted to follow up with Mr. Smythe about finance and facilities from previous, from the beginning of the month when we talked about Oprah, because that was is that on? No, we did the work. So that, before we jump too far ahead, I'm just curious if.
Maybe better, if we're doing Robert's rules, is it in an old business?
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine, no problem.
Okay, so at this time, I need an approval for the secretary's minutes, item 15 on the agenda. I need a motion,
I'll make that motion.
and I need a second.
I'll second.
Any questions or comments with regards to the minutes? Seeing none?
Yes. Mr. Krupa?
I abstain.
Mr. MacArthur?
Yes.
Mr. Sanfilippo?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Wondrak? Yes. Ms. Connolly?
Yes. Regarding number 16 policy, at this time, I need a motion to move forward for first reading the items listed under 16A.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Okay. Roll call and then public hearing? Public hearing first. Okay, sorry. I had a brain cramp. At this time, we'll open the floor for public hearing on any of the items listed for first reading under 16A. Seeing none, we will close public hearing, and now we can have a roll call.
Mr. Krupa?
In favor.
Mr. MacArthur?
Yes.
Mr. Sanfilippo?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Wondrak?
Yes.
Mr. Adenizio?
Yes.
Ms. Connolly?
Yes. At this time, I need a motion for approval upon second reading, the items listed under 16B.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay. Questions or comments from the board? Okay. At this time, we'll open the floor for public comment on the items listed for approval on second reading under 16B. Seeing none. Roll call.
Mr. McGarth?
Yes.
Mr. Sanfilippo?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Wondrak?
Yes.
Mr. Anizio?
Yes.
Mr. Krupa?
Yes.
Ms. Conlon?
Yes. At this time, I need a approval for item number 17 by consent agenda 7. Oh, sorry, C. Oh, I forgot C. I'm sorry. See, this is what happens when you don't bring your glasses to a board meeting. I'm totally in summer mode already. I need a motion to move on expedited reading policy 9400.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? Okay. Seeing none, we will open the floor for public hearing on item C, which is the expedited reading and approval of policy 9400. And seeing none, we'll.
Wait, no, coming down.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you were just getting here, or if you were coming.
I am just getting here, but I did see that expedited policy. Hi, I'm Betsy Cross. Could you just go over the changes of why you needed the expedited policy and why it needed to be expedited?
Mrs. Cross, I know you're very familiar with how this goes here. It's not a question and answer period. It's just a public comment period.
No, I know, but you're expediting this policy on media, right? And we have a huge lawsuit going on right now, so I would like to know exactly why you're expediting it and not doing it the regular way.
Mrs. Zawodniak covered that in the policy minutes last week.
All right, maybe she can go over it again tonight.
Here.
All right, maybe somebody else can go over it and you can just tell us why you're doing it and why you're expediting it. Because it's expedited, so I don't remember it being discussed that it was gonna be expedited. You got a big lawsuit going on right now, so please go over why you're doing it.
Dyer wants me to read it. Sure. Per Mrs. Zawodniak's minutes, which were read and discussed at last week's meeting, Policy 9400, News Media Relations, has not been revised since 2009. Some of the revisions include addition of board president as chief communications representative of the board. Prior approval must be given for interviews when the staff or student is representing or speaking on behalf of the board or district. Staff is not prohibited from engaging with the media, provided they do not indicate or imply that they represent or are speaking on behalf of the board or district, and provided that they indicate that they are speaking on their own behalf as a private citizen. Staff should be cognizant of their obligation to protect the privacy and confidentiality provisions of federal and state laws relating to students and school operations, and rights of the board in situations that may interfere with the safe and orderly operation of the schools and the learning environment. And as per last week, the committee recommends adoption upon expedited reading of policy 9400. Are there any other questions or comments, any other public hearing with regards to policy 9400? Seeing none, roll call, Mr. Smythe.
Mr. Sanfilippo?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Wondrak?
Yes.
Mr. Anizio?
Yes.
Mr. Krupa?
Yes.
Mr. MacArthur?
Yes.
Ms. Conlon?
Yes. Okay. So now we can do this. Item number 17 is the Board of Education report. I need a motion to approve by consent agenda, items 17A through K.
I'll make that motion.
Can I get a second? Thank you, Mr. Wondrak. Any questions or comments with regards to item 17A through K? Seeing none?
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Wondrak? Yes. Mr. Anizio?
Yes, except I am going to abstain from letter A, E, and K due to having a family member working in the district.
There's no agendas out. Can somebody,
Mr. Dugan, can you please make sure that Mrs. Cross is in order?
could you please tell me where I can find a copy of the agenda? And if you don't have a copy, say what those items are.
Mrs. Cross, you can't speak out in the meeting, please.
I know, I'd like an agenda.
Mrs. Cross, maybe if you come on time, you'd have gotten an agenda and not rushed at this point. Thank you.
Does anybody have an agenda?
Thank you.
Mr. Krupa?
Why is contract in that?
Mr. Krupa?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. MacArthur?
Yes.
Mr. Sanfilippo?
Yes.
Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Good, everybody?
Mrs. Dyer, number 18, would you like to?
Madam President,
Sure.
may I interject?
I'm sorry, go right ahead,
That's
Mr.
okay.
MacArthur.
I just want to say thank you to, on behalf of the board, for passing A. It's the WTEA contract, and I just wanted to take a minute to thank both sides. We worked very hard. Their contract expires at the end of this week. Starting next week, they'll be able to start with their new contract. They'll be able to start in September with their new contract, and I want to thank both sides. It was a lot of hard work, and thank you very much.
18, Mrs. Dyer.
Thank you. With regard to 18, the superintendent's report, could I have a motion by consent agenda to approve items A through W?
I'll make that motion.
Wait, separate Brian's comment. Number D, separate
Do we have a
his
second?
contract.
Do we have a second? We're going to talk right through you. Do we have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you.
Wait, I want to tape it.
Okay. Any
Mr.
questions or
Wondrak?
comments from the board?
We didn't do questions or comments. Yeah, are there any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, sorry, Mr. Smythe, proceed.
Mr. Wondrak? Mr. Adenizio?
Yes, except in letter A, I'm going to abstain from 2019-20 rehire list revisions for the WTASC administration due to any potential conflicts that could exist because of a family member working here.
Mr. Krupa?
Yes, with the exception of 18D now.
Yay, good job, Andy.
Mr. MacArthur?
Yes.
Mr. Sanfilippo?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Abstain on D, yes on everything else.
Ms. Connolly?
Yes.
19.
Mr. Smythe, number 19, business office agenda.
Sure. As for a motion to approve under the business office, items 19A through R by consent agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Do you need a glass of water? You got it? Thank you. Just give us a second.
Sure. Whoa.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, so let's
Thanks,
start out with
Chris.
19.
Need a motion for 19.
I need, Mr.
I have
Smythe.
it. Motion, I have a second.
Any questions or comments with regards to the business office report, item 19? Seeing none.
Mr. Adenizio? Yes. Mr. Krupa?
Yes.
Mr. MacArthur?
Yes.
Mr. Sanfilippo?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Wondrak? Yes. Ms. Connolly?
Yes. Mr. Adenizio, now would be the time for your old business and your question before we open for public comment.
Yeah, so previously with the in finance facilities, we had the discussion about OPA requests, how employees in the district were going to try to track the amount of hours that were given towards requests and different things of that nature. And I was just wondering, you know, since it's been a couple weeks, how is that going? If you could give an update, if you have an update yet.
Well, everyone's looking to track their time. I can give you an example for myself. I would spend approximately 4 hours today preparing OPA responses, reviewing documents, redacting personal identifiable information of employees and home addresses of students in response to an OPA request. Last week, for myself, it was about 4 hours. The week before that, it was between 4 and 8. The week following, our F&F committee trying to conduct some of the searches that we've been asked to conduct, where we're looking for emails for extended period of times with key phrases such as contract, vote. You know, they're turning up a lot of records, but I don't know that they're responsive records. So we're trying to find a balance or determine a way to, you know, best respond to these requests. But my goal is at the each F&F that we're going to have information to provide with the time being spent. And where a lot of the time's being spent, like the request for bank statements from June and July of 2012, before it comes to me for the review and the redaction, our accounting manager is pulling those files from the archive. So there's, for I think that one, there was an hour and a half spent in doing that. There was one for bank statements for another 6 or 7 year period. She's in the process of completing that, but she's already put in 2 to 3 hours of it. But the big time consumer is with our technology department trying to do these type of research. So I've asked them to track their time, and we're going to have a comprehensive report, as comprehensive as it could be on a monthly basis with the time. But it's a lot of time being spent. Not by just myself, but, my assistant, we have the log on our website where we log every OPA request that comes in. We provide the response that was generated. We don't provide the actual records for confidentiality issues, but it's also the time and resources of the different departments that are providing these documents.
Yeah, and that's what we're interested in seeing, how it's spread out through all departments. Because,
yeah, and that's what we're going to identify.
Okay.
So it won't just be the business office, it'll be the technology department, it'll be HR if it's the HR. So
perfect.
I'll report more at the July F&F.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other issues for old business? Seeing none at this time, we'll open the floor for public comment on any district issue. Time is limited to 5 minutes per policy 0167. Mics are open.
Our callers are waiting to take it. Our phones are waiting to take it.
Exactly what it sounded like.
Our operators are standing by.
Betsy Cross, I live in Wall Township. I just want to mention that, Mr. Smythe, if you had just told me how much interest you received and how much your bank fees were, you wouldn't have been spending 4 hours redacting information you didn't need to redact. So sadly, I had to put in an OPA request, right? And what that showed is, I think we made about $10 in interest and we had $9 million in the bank. That's where the real issue is. Why in the world would anybody renew Brian Smythe's contract right now? Everyone up here should have been a no. Mr. Smythe? What? That, of course, Allison doesn't want you to respond to anything. She wants to.
It's a public comment period, so
All
why
right,
don't you
don't
finish your
talk on my
comments?
time.
And don't worry, he's paused it.
And
We've got
he's going to
this.
answer? Okay. Have him answer why we have $9 million in the bank and we made about $11 in interest. You know what I was just doing? Spending about 3 hours on that myself. It's ridiculous. Provide the information. We have lots of people looking at it right now, Mr. Smythe. I was trying to go through quickly some of the accounts. That AccuScan, could you go over what they do for us? We spend $25,000 on AccuScan in a number of years. If you could go over that. I see a wire transfer for $110,000 to Mellon Bank in 2012 on that statement. Now, I do have another statement where I can track it back, but I can't track back that one. So I'll leave you a copy of it. If you could go over why you're not providing the OPRAs regarding Cheryl Dyer's illegal contract. What are we paying Mr. Gross for? We're paying him way too much. So I put in those documents again today. I'm not agreeing to another extension. Mr. Smythe does not return my phone calls. It would be really helpful to meet with him and Mr. Lee, but Brian Smythe will never allow that because he has to keep withholding the documents. And why in the world, Ralph, would you want to charge me for the documents now? That's ridiculous. You're the FNF chairman. Get these documents to the public. Why are you hiding documents? Why do you want to charge the public after July? It's crazy. So, Mr. Smythe wasting 4 hours of time. TD Bank has bank statements from 2013 to currently. Go online, hit file, save, and send them to me tomorrow. You wrote me back today that you need more time. No, you don't. It will take you 30 seconds. Anybody that has TD Bank can go and do it. So I suggest you go and do that tomorrow and stop wasting your time and my time. The emails I want are between August 20th and October 17th, 2017. That was 11 days of emails, and Mr. Smythe still can't get them to me. So there's a real problem here. I spent hours today summarizing this to send this back to you, wasting my time. My time is very valuable. It's a lot more valuable than his wasting everybody else's. So your Oprah log is ridiculous in showing how much time Mr. Smythe is now wasting when he wasted $1 million and didn't get interest and is paying bank fees God knows why when nobody else is. I have a personal account. I'm not paying the bank fees like you're paying. Why would you renew this guy's contract and give him a raise? You have typos in the contract. How could you have typos in it? Who read it? Anybody? Raise your hand if you read it. Anybody read his contract? You got typos in it. Good job. And where's Dory? She walked in for 30 seconds and then walked back out. What was that about? Could you go over your contract costs, Mr. Smythe, tonight? Every year you seem to have it wrong. So could you go over what your total contract costs were? The last one I have, your total contract costs were $298,013. I asked for it and I didn't get it. So I'm wondering if anybody on the board actually had a copy before they voted yes. Glad to see we have the WTEA raises. That took way too long. Way too long. Tonight, you should have had a summary. I did Oprah it and say, could you provide a summary of what the changes are? If you could go over all the changes in the WTEA contracts, every single change you made, and go over every single change you made for Brian Smythe's contract, and that you missed the typos. And I'm very glad that Mr. Krupa is on the board. Very glad. I couldn't be happier.
Thank you, Ms. Cross.
So go ahead, Ms. Connolly, and get my questions answered.
Ms.
I'd
Gross.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Mr. Gross,
Thank you.
I'm not sure why you're still here.
Thank
We
you.
need a new attorney, a new
Thank you.
auditor, a new business
Ms. Cross?
administrator. Pronto.
Actually, I stopped your clock when it was at 5 minutes and 20 seconds.
Could I have more time, Ms. Connolly?
No, there's no,
No?
motion made to extend the time for public comment, so your time is up, Mrs. Cross.
Anybody could make
Thank
a
you, Mrs.
motion if they
Cross.
wanted to.
Thank you, Mrs. Cross. We're moving on.
I could be here all night going over
I
the
know you
list
could,
of
Ms.
problems
Cross.
with Brian Smythe. I
Thank
know
you.
you know I can.
Thank you.
I know
Thank
you know
Your-
I can,
Your
Mr.
time is
Gross.
up. Is there anyone else who had any public comment?
Thank you.
Hi, Ann Moonen, Wall Township. Two things as I walked into the school, in the intermediate school, I saw the inside of the lockers. Do the lockers get painted over the summertime because they're looking really shabby? I mean, that's like, if you want to answer me afterwards. And then second of all, I came in a few minutes late and I did not get to see the agenda. Is the resolution to not rehire Ms. Dyer in the agenda? I did not get a copy of it. It is there, and it was voted affirmatively. Okay, thank you for protecting our schools.
Please continue, Ms. Noonan. Ms. Moonen. Miss Noonan.
Ms.
Ms.
No.
Moonan. Too many M's and N's.
I'm sorry, I'll change it. My husband won't like that, nor my children. But those were the only two things I said, and just a thank you for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Moonen, I didn't want to interrupt you while you were speaking, but just for your reference, it was item 17K in the Board of Education report, and so I believe it was unanimously approved.
That's why you should read it and have agendas out for a $77 million budget.
Mr. Dobrovich-Vago, I believe you're up.
Yes, Wide Road, Fago, Wall Township. I know Mr. Smythe got back to me via email about my OPA request, and I believe that one of them was extended for the deadline, and the other two were, I guess, too broad of a request to be met. I was just wondering if the board has deliberated on the idea of that I brought up last meeting of what constitute a OPA request being too broad, and moving forward when we start having to pay for these requests, what's going to constitute that being that being caused to pay for that. I just want to know if there's an update on that. I think that's very important moving forward, especially since I learned how to do this, and you could OPA a lot of things and see a lot of different things that's going on behind the scenes, or at least we could see that to the extent. And another thing I had a question about as I was driving past the high school lot the other day, I remember seeing how students were able to paint their parking spots in the senior lot as a fundraiser. I would love to know the cost it's going to take to repaint over that to a blank spot this coming school year, and how much money that fundraiser made. I want to know if it balanced out to the costs to what it was, because I don't know if it really did, and I think that needs to be looked into. And I'm sure it's a fun fundraiser for everyone to paint their spots. I know I would have loved to have done that, but from a business perspective, I would love to know the numbers behind that, because I think that I don't think they're balancing out. And from my perspective, there weren't many of that spots painted. So, thank you.
Robin Cervantes. I live in Wall Township. I just wanted to say this is my last month, I guess. This is my youngest graduated last week. I actually was hoping to come last week and make it before my comment before he graduated, but since this is my last month as a parent in the district, I just really wanted to say thank you, specifically to the teachers, all of the teachers that have touched my kids over these 17 years that we've been here, with special shout out to the music department, Mrs. Swinkowski, Mr. Bryant, and Mr. and Mrs. Hollander. The music department, I mean, for my kids, I'm sure there are other children who benefit from a lot of the departments, specific, but both my boys have come out of this district as talented musicians and really confident, and I owe a great debt of gratitude. So I just wanted to say thank you. And for any parent that maybe hasn't, or their child hasn't found a special spot yet, I highly recommend the music department and the arts, because we do have amazing staff in those areas, but we have amazing staff everywhere and great talented coaches that, certain kids find their way in sports. Mine benefited from music, and I just really do owe a great debt of gratitude, so thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cervantes, and congratulations on your graduate. Anybody else for public comment? Seeing none, we will close public comment. And before I afford Mr. Smythe and Mrs. Dyer the opportunity to answer any questions that they'd like to answer, Mr. Dobrovich-Fago, there was one question you asked that I can answer, which is that conversation will happen in the F&F committee, and our committees haven't met yet because of the strange meeting schedule we had this month. So that would be in the first week of July that conversation would transpire. Mr. Smythe, is there anything that you would care to address this evening?
Sure. With regard to avoiding OPA requests, if questions were answered based on extensive experience, that is not the case. Questions that are answered typically are followed up with multiple questions to each of the answers, and then at the end, an OPA request for the documents that were used to provide that response in what would appear to be hopes to find a discrepancy in the answers provided and the documents provided. So I don't think it's accurate that we would avoid OPA requests if questions weren't answered, since we receive the OPA requests on such a timely manner and on a regular basis. With regard to interest earned, earned, I guess the bank statements that are being requested go back to 2012. That's 7 years. Now, we didn't answer the question by providing what the bank fees were for 84 months of bank statements. That did not seem to be a prudent use of the district resources or the business office in looking to provide that information. So, with regard to interest earned, I reported last week at the workshop, over the last 5 years, out of 53 districts in Monmouth County, we ranked 16. So there's 15 districts of the 53 that earned more interest than us in 5 years.
Mrs. Cross, I'm going to ask you only one more time. Mrs. Cross, you have had your opportunity. Mrs. Cross, you are out of order. You are out of order. It matters. It matters that you're out of order because
So-
we run a.
With
No,
regard
you
to
are. Thank you.
2017-18, the last audited year, the district, out of 53 districts in Monmouth County, ranked 9th, so 8 districts earned more interest than the district. We were in $40-something thousand in interest. The misinformation that we have more money in the bank than all the other districts. Maybe it's a misunderstanding on what constitutes cash in the bank. There's general fund, but then there's also special projects funds. So if districts have had a referendum, those funds are available. They do earn interest. 3 of the 8 districts that earned more interest did have referendum, had passed a referendum in the last year or two to the tune of approximately $30 million. So those funds are in the bank and they do accrue interest that is reported in their annual audit information. So with regard to the interest compared with the other 53 districts in Monmouth County, we rank 9th, a district that can provide that answer very quickly. As far as 7 years worth of bank fees, I think that may be Princeton, who Princeton Bank doesn't charge any fees to their local school district. If we can get a bank in Wall Township that will not charge the district any fees, we'd be more than happy to do business with them. With regard to Oprah requests and not returning individuals' phone calls, the response was provided in writing because Oprah, to be a valid Oprah request, needs to be submitted in writing. So I believe all information, all communication with regard to the Open Public Records Act, any requests for clarifications and any clarifications provided should also be provided in writing because that would make it a valid Oprah request. I'm not sure if there was any others directed toward me. With regard to, obtaining bank statements, it should take 30 seconds. Well, it took someone in my office because we need to produce the records that are maintained on file by the district because that's what a public record is. However, the time spent is not just producing it, but it's reviewing those records to make sure that we don't provide any confidential information, such as checks that are provided from a salary account that is provided to employees and they have their home address written on the check being issued to them. We review all those. The Oprah request that went out today was 250-something pages of bank statements. It was for 2 months, and I had to redact. There was 311 pieces of information that I had to redact from those documents for privacy concerns of either the parents of students in the district or of staff in the district.
And that
because
was your choice. It could have been 6 pages.
Please stop yelling out. Mrs. Cross, you're out of order.
That was his choice. He doesn't have to provide hundreds of pages.
if there's a request for bank statements for a month, I can't decide which pages I want to give and which pages I do not want to give. It's a bank statement.
Mrs. Cross, we're going to start to enforce the law here, and if you call out one more time, I am going to ask you to leave, okay? We've given you ample opportunity to try to be civil and polite, but you're not doing that. So I'm going to give you one last chance before I'm going to ask you to leave.
I'm good.
Mrs. Dyer, is there anything you'd like to respond to this evening?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Just with regard to painting the lockers, I don't believe it's on the schedule to paint lockers at the intermediate school. However, when they are painted, typically it is only the outside of the locker that's painted, not the inside. And I had the same observation as I walked around through the school today, is wow, the inside of these lockers look really bad. So maybe that's something to consider in the future, but typically when you have your lockers painted, which is electromagnetic paint that they apply, it is typically only to the outside of the locker.
And do you have an idea about the cost of the spots in the high school parking lot, or is that not information you have at hand?
I don't have it, I don't have the information, but I believe the solution to that, because that was initially discussed when the fundraiser was started, is that the students themselves actually white out the spot prior to them then painting it the way they want to paint it. So it isn't like the district going in and we black it all out. I'm almost positive, because I recall what the decision was at the time, is that when you take over a new spot, if it needs to be painted, you white it out and then you can go ahead. So I think it's just a matter of the cost of that paint to white out the spot.
Madam President?
Mr. Adenizio?
I believe going back when that was first discussed, there was never a conversation of the district itself doing anything to those spots. It was going to be the students, they were going to paint them, and then if other students were coming in, they wanted to do something, they would do them. If a new student got that spot and they didn't want to paint it, they could just park their car on what was ever there. So there was never a discussion or even talk of allocating any money to do anything with the parking lot. So to be clear. And then one other thing, just, I guess, maybe in finance facilities minutes, during our meeting about the charges for Oprah documents, we said charge for documents. So technically, if you go onto the NewJersey.gov GRC website, it's actually called a special service charge. That's how they refer to it for documents, additional fees for documents. And on there, first of all, it's not something necessarily new that we're doing. We've always had the ability to do it. We just haven't done it. And what we were more or less doing was noticing that potentially somebody could be charged for documents depending on what's coming in. So what I would suggest, anybody that has a question on Oprah documents, they have a link on here for special service charges, special service charge 14-point analysis. And it discusses what a custodian of record, there's 14 questions that a custodian of record essentially has to answer to justify additional service charges on somebody's Oprah request. And it's pretty, and this is from the government site, www.nj.gov/GRC/PDF/Oprah special service charge.pdf. All the answers are right there. We're not doing anything, but if you look online, there's places, people that have tens of thousands of pages and hundreds of man hours. So it's not reasonable that people just do that and there's not something else associated with it. This could be something that we never have to do, or it could be something that comes up, but the law says we can do it, and as long as these 14 questions are answered and justifies it, then it can be done. So that's what I wanted to clarify. It's a special service charge. It's just not charging for records.
Thank you for that, Mr. Adenizio. Any other questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations again, Mr. Krupa.